Hello doll friends, this is Michael Canadas with the Carmel Doll Shop and the Grovian Doll Museum. We are going to have a sewing class. We're doing something a little bit different. Normally when we have a sewing class, it's usually the creator of the product, the designer of the pattern that is teaching the class. This time I am the creator of the pattern and the designer of the costume. But we thought we'd just shake it up a little bit. So we invited one of our really regular attendees, but someone that doesn't really need to go to any sewing class. She's highly accomplished, and I just thought it'd be fun to just give her the pattern, give her the fabric, and let her teach us her talent. So Angela, this is our friend Angela, and this is what she's going to work on. So how do you feel about this, Angela?
I love it. It's beautiful. We get to work on the pagoda sleeves, and it just displays really well on this array. I mean, on this roamer.
So how do you feel about 10 yards of piping?
It's daunting, but I don't, just sit.
We can do it.
You could do it. You could just watch, a little Agatha Christie and.
That's right. Well, and we did try this two ways. We tried to do, we've done in our time lots and lots of piping. It's no big deal around here. But it's very interesting. Fabric is alive. And it didn't really work making the piping by machine. It only worked by making it by hand. So you have to do all 10 yards by hand. Then you get to go in and do it by machine. So I'm looking forward to, I've observed Angela in class, but I haven't sat next to her for 4 days and sewn, but we're gonna do that.
Yeah, well, fun.
So we're gonna do that. So get ready, here we come. So here we are, we're getting ready to go in and do this project. So Angela, the first thing that we have to do is create piping. So are you prepared to do 10 yards of piping?
Yes.
Well, one thing we have discovered with this project is we did this two ways. We did the piping by machine, and we were not satisfied with it because the piping is cut, of course, on a bias so that you have that nice be able to turn it and curve, and that by sewing it on the machine, it was too taut. So we really basically need to lightly baste the material onto the cord. And I should tell you, the cord, this is what I found to be the best cord for this scale that we're doing, is it's actually window blind.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when you go to pull the window blind down, you get it at the hardware store, and that's where we get these really able to have these nice curves without a lot of fuss. So what we have to do now is we're just going in and we are lightly
Just basting. Oops.
basting. You don't even have to worry about whether your stitches are pretty or not.
No, just big.
Big stitches. So there's over 10 yards of trim in this ensemble. So it does take some time, but it's actually kind of a nice therapeutic thing to do, don't you think?
Yeah, and it'll go fast. It's just a lot. It'll go fast because, again, you're just basting it lightly, and you could take big stitches, not huge stitches, but you could probably go with probably 3/16 or that.
But it's not really gonna, it will be encased into the garment, so there's no way that anyone's ever gonna see your stitches.
And you don't have to, when you actually start applying it and sewing it to the dress, you're going to make it more taut. So this is just to kind of make it stay in place in the meantime.
Right.
So it's not a big
and
deal.
we want it to be firmly around the cord, but we don't want it to be strangled. And that's kind of what we found by using the zipper foot to do it, which is normally how we would do piping for a lot of different things. It became too taut, and it kind of miniaturized it, and it didn't have the. We're using it as a decorative feature, so we want it to really show the curvature. And I'm going to step behind you. You know, we know Angela really well, but doing a sewing workshop, you really get to know people really well, because you have to get in close. So I'm going to show you what she's doing. And you're so lucky you can have a thimble on your finger.
So I like this just to grab it, because sometimes it'll slip out, or your finger starts to go numb after you're doing 7 yards.
Well, you're going to do way more than 7 yards. But I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
I'll be on the other end, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, it'll save your finger if you have something on there.
There's no way with this design that you have to do this first, or there's nothing you can. I mean, I guess you could do the waistband of the skirt first, but not that you can't even do first. You have to do this first.
And this one's sort of mindless. You can be watching your show or
Absolutely.
watching YouTube videos and just keep on stitching along.
It's about just feeling it more than anything. So you can see how that's going to work. We're going to go. I'm going to get at the other end of this, and we're going to just keep doing it. Oh, you know what? Should we talk about how, if they have to join pieces, how they should do that? Because I think you've come to a join.
Actually, it wasn't. But if you have to get a really long piece, you're going to have to do
like 10 yards.
Yeah, you're going to have to do a bias. So we'll have to show you an example on how to, like right here. Here's a bias.
So what you do is you do it on this. You do it one piece overlapping the other piece, and then one piece overlapping, like almost like here,
like an L shape.
Like an L shape, exactly.
So you're going to do it that way, and then just sew on the diagonal of that.
Yeah.
So here you have like the square, and you could see how the line is going on there. So you could go over it like that, put your other piece, and then because it's so light here, you could actually then draw your line and then sew over it.
Absolutely.
That way, so it'll make it easier for you guys.
And this is a way to join long strips of fabric from the 18th century on. So it's used in upholstery. It's used in so many different ways to put two pieces of fabric together. So we're gonna do some sewing, and we will be back. So we're back. How'd that feel, doing 10 yards of piping? We got a lot of talking in.
Yeah.
So the next thing we're gonna do, so we've got the piping all sewn. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna trim it. So we're gonna trim it to about 1/4 of an inch. So we're gonna use a pinking shear, and we're just gonna go in, because the pinking shear will give us a little less bulk that we don't need. And we're gonna just go, and now we're gonna do 10 yards of piping. Wouldn't it be great if we could just roll this through a machine and have it all?
Yeah, if you're lucky and you have one of those pinking machines, this is the time to use it.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, if you got.
But I don't know that you couldn't run the piping through it. I think that would cause a issue.
Oh, I think you can.
Can you?
Yeah, you can. You just would have to lay it this way and then run it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That would work.
Yeah, and I know. I think
we have those. I'll practice that, and I'll let you know how it works.
And I think the Featherlight or the Featherweight sewing machine has that attachment. So if you have one of those, you're going to be super lucky. You can just run through it really quickly and not have to kind of eyeball it as you're cutting.
The good news is if we get a little wiggly, it's not gonna, none
Yeah.
of this is gonna show.
No. But it's gonna make it easier so we don't have all that bulk added to
The seams.
yeah. That's the important part. Everything will lay flat beautifully. So we're just gonna continue on doing this until we're done.
It's really not that hard to
No.
do this by hand. The basting the piping.
That was it went
It's very
faster.
therapeutic. Hmm.
And it went a lot faster than I thought.
Your sewing is much better than mine, but no one's ever going to see it. You do have to. It's like being a violinist or a pianist. You
Practice.
have to practice. You have to get in there and do it regularly. And sometimes I go long stretches without doing it, and then it's not as uniformed as I would like.
And sometimes it's fine because especially in places you're not going to see it. It doesn't matter.
That's right.
And then by that time you start sewing on everything else, then you're warmed up enough to
That's
go back
right,
to it.
Go do the.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we will be back. I'm going to go and I'll go at the other end of the 10 yards and we'll get this done faster. So we'll be back. So we're back and we have gotten all the trim prepared. We have sewn it and we have clipped it. And now we're going to go in and make our skirt trim. So Angela is pinning it, lightly pinning it, so that the piping is framing this cut velvet ribbon. Don't you just love this velvet ribbon?
It is beautiful.
I don't mean to push you into
No.
that, but I just love it.
It's
Just-
very hard to find velvet with a design that is nice.
Yes, I mean, usually it's, funny things, but this has got a little floral motif. So we're making the trim for the skirt, and I think it's probably the most work in the whole skirt is doing this, other maybe than doing the pleats and gathers, whatnot.
And gathers are fun.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, I think they're fun. Makes some people in class cry, but not you.
No,
No.
I love gathers. I think the intimidating thing is probably the spacing of it. And if you're afraid, just use tiger tape.
Yeah.
It's okay. You have permission. Once your eye gets adjusted to it, then you could do it on your own. But you'll learn.
And we're basically going to be putting almost 36 inches of material into a 7.25 or 7.5 inch waistband. So we got a lot of gathering to do. So we're going to get this all pinned. We probably should just pin one side and then do it,
Yeah.
because otherwise then you're going to be catching all the pins as you.
And you don't,
Go.
you don't want to have to deal with it. You want to make sure that it's all done before you try to pin it again and sew from the other side.
Exactly.
And then you'll catch yourself, and you don't want to stab yourself on these needles while you're trying to sew. 'Cause
And if you hear some heavy breathing, the bulls have decided to come to work, and here's Annabelle. Hi, Annabelle. Oh, yes, lost the camera. Annabelle's here, and Bixby somewhere, and Louie somewhere. So they'll be in and out. But there's going to be activity in the other rooms. So
there are
eventually-
special guest stars.
They are, yeah, but they'll come back later.
Okay, we could start with threading a needle. And if you're afraid, just take about your forearm length. You don't have to go too long.
I don't usually use so long, but everybody has their own amount of thread they like to use.
I was reading in a book that and I think it was from 1880, and they recommended a piece of thread that was as long as your arm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
but-
for me, that would be a yard. That's
Yeah.
too long.
So,
And for David, it would be a yard and a half. So, and that will really, you can do a lot of stressing out of the material with that.
and you don't want to do that.
No.
So when you start, you're going to take small stitches, but you're going to go into the velvet. So when you start, you want to do a back stitch.
It's very important
Yeah,
to do
because
that.
you want to make sure that you catch this really well. Because if you do a running stitch right away,
And
it'll
we
slip.
have a little problem, then it all
Yeah.
comes out. There's from another generation before you were even born, Angela, there was a doll couturier, and that she really did very, very well. And she had a crew that did the basic, construction for her, and then she did all the hand sewing. But if you clipped her hand sewing anywhere, the whole thing would come out. She would use these huge threads and then never tie off, which is great if you needed to redo her trim. You could easily do it.
So when you're going to sew this, you want to take small stitches, and you're going to stitch from the velvet side, because that is where you'll get your small stitches. You sew here, and then when you go up through
Take a little bigger.
it goes big, and it's going to show big, and that is perfectly fine, because when you sew, you will only see a very tiny stitch on the front.
If at all.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably take your needle and kind of manipulate the nap
Oh, yeah.
to cover anything.
And a good way to do that too is to almost come in right where you started to have a tiny stitch, and then just go back up. And that is where you get your flea bite stitches, is by just almost going right back to where you started.
And then as we go, we'll kind of pull it so we don't get puckers.
Right.
And then I'm going to go around to show the other angle. So I'm going to get up and go around.
And it seems almost counterintuitive to do it from the front, because you're going to want to do it from the back. It's best to do it from the front, because then you could see how your work.
Stitches. Absolutely.
And then you go back. And if you find that it's really hard to pull, you can either use pliers, or you can even use this gadget. Oop.
And I love this gadget. What is this called?
It's a thread or a needle puller. And
I
just
needed
like
that. You know where you could really use that is on hat making.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's why I kind of got it, because then
We will be selling those in the boutique, so it's no problem. You'll know where to get them.
okay, let me go back here.
That's looking really good.
Again, so then you won't see any of the thread, because it blends
blends
in.
in.
But on the other side, you'll see long, big stitches, and this is where it's going to hold and take shape. So don't forget to every now and then go back and do a back stitch. So you go
Do you see
back.
the reason why, Angela, we did the piping kind of lightly basted? Because it moves better.
Yes.
It would have, if we would have used a machine, it would have been very stiff and not have that fluidity.
And you won't be able to manipulate it as well.
And we've got to do that. This is the easiest bit of piping we have to do on this project.
I actually prefer doing it by hand,
Do
because
you?
because again, it warms you up for the other stitching, so that you have neater stitches, because sometimes it's kind of like when you make a pancake, the first one never comes out
That's
nice.
right. That's right.
And so it just warms you up, and then you can just keep on
Well,
going.
you'll be plenty warm, because
Yeah.
we've got to do 80 inches of this. So we will get this part done, and then we will be back, and then we're going to do the next step, which is going to be basically we're going to start making the skirt.
Oh, fun.
Okay, we'll be back. So we're back, and I wanted to show you where Angela is. She's just about done with one side of the trim, the skirt, and I wanted to show you how beautiful it looks. She's done a very nice job. It's nice and tight, even, looking really, really nice. And it's very therapeutic, isn't it, Angela?
Oh, yeah.
You just keep doing it, and keep doing it. And so we're gonna get this one side. We're just about done with this, and then David has made us lunch, and we're gonna have a little lunch break, and we'll be back to finish the other side. And then we are going to go on to the skirt. So we're back, Angela. You've been working like a little demon here.
Yeah.
So show us what you've done.
So I did the other side, and then you can see here, again, really long stitches, because that's securing the back to the front with our tiny, tiny stitches. And you can't see it at all.
Can you hold it up a little bit closer?
Yeah.
And you did a really nice job. It looks very regular on both sides.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, it makes a beautiful trim, don't you think?
It does, it does.
And I should point out that we, you know, I know that a lot of people want antique dolls to always have kind of, you know, faded, you know, ecru-y. We decided to really choose really black and white, although this is not white, but just to be in the period, because they loved, you know, very clean linens. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, they did. And it's nice to have on a newer doll, just as it would be if you had it right in from the shop.
And I will tell you though, if that doesn't work for you, I did the hats while I was at home with Lou, who's under the table making a lot of noise and shaking the table. He wasn't feeling good, so I did hats at home, and when we went back to work, I dropped one of the hats I made, and we didn't know it until I went out on the street, and we actually ran over it with the car.
Oh no!
But you know what? It looked beautiful. It looked absolutely antique. So if you don't like our fabric, you could easily antique it. So we've gotten this part done. So now we're going to move on, right?
Yep.
Okay. So next.
We'll put this aside.
Oh, put this aside.
And
We'll get a little bit. Well, we could just go right into it.
we'll work on the silk.
So we have our skirt piece. Now, I will point out to you that something that in class sometimes people get a little. The pattern piece that I've done has the right shape, so you don't have to get your measuring tape out and measure it. It is shorter in the front and longer in the back, which is how skirts are supposed to be. So we have to, next thing we have to do is this little goodie.
We're going to apply that to the bottom.
So this is our tarlatan piece.
So we'll apply it here. It will do a stitch on the bottom, maybe on the machine.
We'll do that on the machine
Yeah.
because it's not.
Yeah. And then we'll flip it over.
Flip it over. Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
And you can use white thread, or you can use black thread. We are back, and we are going to attach the tarlatan to the skirt. We've had a little bit of machine problems, and so we have replaced the machine. This is my old faithful Rosie. So you and Rose here have become friends.
We're friends now.
Well, but you're getting a lesson in these oldies,
Yeah.
aren't you? This machine is way, way older than you. So there you go. So let's do it.
Okay. Oh, now it's like what? There you go.
There she goes. That sounds right. So we're doing about 10 stitches per inch.
10 stitches per inch,
We're
quarter inch seam allowance.
old machines, you could actually do really nice decorative tops with these machines.
I think so. It's really a very good machine. It's
The other one's a good machine too, as long as your name is Leo. So only Leo can operate it.
He has put that under a spell because
has.
I don't know why it did fine in the trial run. And then it was like, nope.
Okay, so we've got our interfacing, our skirt guard. What else do we want to call it? It's got quite a few names. Got anything to add?
No, I think that's it. The crinoline bit.
And it gives it a little body. Don't you, and I think the next thing, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but you know I will. Shouldn't we do a little trimming?
Yes, and then we'll press it.
So I think I would do a little trimming. Just so that we get all of our unusual. Why don't you use my, are these mine? Yeah, those are mine.
Well, I'll use the big one.
Because I don't want you to ruin yours with the, tarlatan is very bad for scissors.
I think this one will be okay.
Okay. I just don't want you to mess up your scissors. Now, if you notice in this design, we are just doing this interfacing or skirt guard, and we pinked the edge. This is something that you see regularly in a Hirag garment. Not all the time. Sometimes it's folded over, and then a running stitch to hold it in place. But a lot of time they'll do this pinking, and sometimes, shockingly, it will be hand pinked, meaning they will sit and do all those little, I guess, crenulated or not crenulated. There's a word for it, but they'll do that by hand.
That's dedication.
It is. Well, I mean, I think that they were doing it with what they had.
Yeah, and it gives a certain finish to it that I'm sure people paid more money for. Nice finish.
In how we're applying this trim, this is the right way for us to do this. Because the trim is going to go in and attach that down.
I've got something under here.
Well, we've got a whole mess here because we've got the snowflakes of doing all the piping, and then we fought with Leo's machine, and his machine won.
That's okay. It won the battle. We'll win the war. We had to recall reinforcements.
We're gonna get, Angela's gonna be having an oldie machine soon.
Yeah, I think I'll end up ordering one.
I mean, you can find them in antique places, and now's not a good time to get to them, but you can probably order one just as easy and get it all serviced and everything.
Not that I don't like my Viking. It's just there's something about these older machines that just feel.
And we've got our monster upstairs. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to be using some. We're going to be sewing some piping down, and those machines don't do what this machine can do. These are just easier to handle in that sense. So the next thing we're going to do, you tell me what you're going to do next.
We're going to press it. So I have this, instead of going all the way to the sewing machine, got this wool padding.
Lovely.
This is actually for vinyl decals.
Oh, really?
But I like it because there's no steam, it's just heat.
Yeah, steam can create sometimes problems particularly with silk, if you have it boil over, and that's looking really good.
Yeah. It'll turn green, but I could feel it getting a little hot.
And so you're putting the fold, the two pieces fabric is folded up, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna just lightly press this and then I'll fold it over and then press it again. Since it's just lightly warm, that
And
will
we're going to
work.
do this your way. On my way of doing it, we had a little, like a little 1/8 of an inch of the taffeta showing, and then the
And it
rest
will.
is folded up.
It'll show.
Just a little.
And then fold it over. And it will fold nice.
And try to make sure when you're doing this that, not Angela, because of course she's a perfectionist, but you want to make sure that your stripes are, when you're folding it over, it's in alignment.
Yeah.
You don't want it to start to go,
So you can see it's still.
yeah, it's still in alignment.
Alignment.
I mean, we can correct it, but it's better to not have it happen in the first place.
Okay, and it turned green.
Now we can really start. That's a nice little gizmo.
And I like it because I could keep it on my desk with me, and
And what is it called?
it's a cricket.
A cricket. And it's just a heat iron, a heat source?
Just a heat iron, and you can feel the heat. You just
Oh yeah, that's great. I mean, we have in our sewing workshop, we have one iron because it is good to get up from. I have to have the discipline of getting up, because I did a hat-a-thon where I worked all day and never got up once, because as you know now, Angela, if I get up and leave the room, everybody leaves the room.
yeah, and
It's an exodus.
that's exactly the reason why I have this little one next to me, because if I have to go somewhere, the dogs will follow me as well, and
And then you gotta get them settled.
yeah, and it takes too long, so it's just better to kind of do that. Right, and then you could press on the.
And we've got
opposite
some,
side.
they're all really in nap time now. So that's looking really good.
Yeah, it gives you a nice, good edge. You could spray it, but at this point,
I don't
we
think
don't
you
really
need
need to.
to.
No, because it's nice and
Well,
hot.
and the tarlatan has a
Yeah.
little bit of a stick to it, so that helps.
And then I like this little mat because then, again, I don't have to go to there anymore.
And that mat is nice because you could probably pin into it too.
Yes, yeah. So if you're doing like pleats, you can pin it and
Yeah,
then
that's
iron
great.
it. And it's nice and thick. It's about a 1/2 inch thick. There you go.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, so that was a big step. So, what are we gonna do next?
Are we going to apply the trim or are we going to?
I think we need to do the trim
Yeah,
next.
I think
Because
so.
because what we're gonna do with the trim, where did the trim go?
There we go.
So what we're gonna do with the trim is, the trim is going to be what holds the interfacing or hem guard up. And then what we do is we use our white thread and we go into the ditch and we sew it on. And again, you can do this really, same technique as sewing the piping onto the velvet, because we're gonna do little small flea bite stitches in the ditch of the.
Yep.
And then on the other side, we can do bigger.
Right.
Because if you flip it over, you will never be able to really even tell they're stitches, because it'll just blend into the tarlatan. So the question for you is, you're the sewer. Where do you want, you can put this anywhere you want, as long as it's within the tarlatan.
Yeah.
You can do it higher, lower.
I wonder if we should.
I mean, mine that we did, I'll tell you that from the edge, It is exactly, well, it's almost 1 inch. But I'm a little cheater. Do you know what I use
No.
to,
Did you use the grid?
I use the design and
Yeah.
to keep it absolutely straight. But you can put it anywhere you want.
That's what I was kind of looking at. Okay, where do I put it here on this green? So you could see here, I'm going to use the third dark green stripe and put it right here.
Now,
I
is it
think.
lining up behind?
Yeah, so it will line up nicely. So you could see that this light, or this green line, the small one, will be right
That's wherever
there.
you want.
And then this white line will be right below.
Right. The only thing that I would say that anybody can do what they want, but what they don't want is they don't want the trim, you know, being at the edge of the jacket. You want some space between.
Yeah, I
So you've
agree.
got plenty of, that's plenty of space, because you can do it however you want. We put ours about 1 inch, you're giving it a little more, but that's gonna also show some fabric too.
Yeah, so it's about 1 inch right at the bottom.
Okay.
So we're good.
Okay, you're good, that's what you want?
So we'll sew it. And I'm wondering, should we use a small thread or a silk thread?
Well, we've got cotton thread here is what we use, but you can use what you like. What is an easy thread for you?
So this one is a really nice thread, but it's an 80 weight. It's very fine, and it's going to be invisible. This one is 100 weight in silk, and it's very strong. I'm thinking we should just go
Okay,
with that one,
all right.
just because it's a little bit on the creamy side.
Well, and that's good,
Versus
because that's what they're gonna get in their kit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
so you could see it matches much nicer than that bright, bright white that I have.
Well, even so, it's not gonna show, because it's gonna be right in the ditch there. If we do it right, which we will. I mean, we've gone this far, we can get through it. But again, this is a lot of hand sewing here in this one little area.
Oh, this one doesn't want to go in.
And this is one little job that the two of us can't do together. It's only one at a
Yeah.
time.
So maybe I'll have you thread a couple of them.
I will.
It doesn't want to thread. It does that.
Well, we'll get this threaded and we will come back and we will show you how we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back. So Angela has her trim all figured out, measured, pinned, lightly pinned, and now you're doing,
Like sewing in the ditch.
you're sewing in the ditch.
Oh, I lost it again.
You're working with what size needles?
It's a size 10 between.
Which is a size I like.
It's a very small size. So, you know, if you want to use a bigger one, use a bigger one. I like the smaller ones because it gives you just enough. So you're not making these big stitches.
Right.
If you use the bigger ones,
You
you
tend
tend
to
to
make
make the bigger stitches. Yeah, this does not like it.
So we're gonna get we're having our thread attack.
Cotton does that. That's okay. Yeah. You have to use yours.
Well, I have got a lot of needles threaded up for you. That's what I've been
Yeah.
doing.
Should use one of those again. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Finally.
So now we're gonna get in. I'm gonna try to get as close as I can so that you can show them what we're doing.
Sometimes you'll accidentally pick up some of the tarlatan And that's okay. Once you start going into it, it's fine.
You'll feel it.
You'll feel it, and
You'll
yeah.
feel it.
So then,
So you're going to go right
again,
down.
small again, and then a large at the back.
And I usually like to kind of adjust as I go.
Yeah.
Make sure my little,
Yeah.
yeah, that they're all. So you have to do this, 2 yards,
Top and bottom.
top and bottom. There's no way to get around
No.
that.
And that's fine. It's a simple running stitch again, a back stitch every so often. And it's not small, tiny stitches. I'll have to redo that one later, but you're just gonna go in
Yeah,
the
you
ditch.
don't want to get into your curvature.
yeah.
You got to stay in the ditch.
But you're just gonna go in here and try to do it at an angle because it makes it easier to get into the ditch. And then pull
Of
out.
course, that if this is something new for people to do,
Yeah.
they can always practice it on a practice piece.
And then if you don't, you can always kind of pull it out. But
Absolutely.
go in.
I find that if I've gotten the piping, then I have to just kind of take that one stitch out. because
Yeah.
It creates
A pucker.
a pucker.
Yeah. So I'll pull it out, but you could see just if you go in at an angle in the ditch
You come right back
and
up.
come back right up, again at an angle, it disappears.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll
Yeah.
let you do this for a couple yards, and we'll come back and see what we're going to do next.
Okay.
So we're back, and Angela has been working really, really hard. So you've got all that sewn down beautifully. So are you getting a little tired?
No.
You ready for more?
And you could kind of see the back where you really, really don't really see the stitches. I'm gonna have
You
to
really
trim-
don't.
No.
I mean,
Like
we
right
have to
here,
clip
it's
a
just,
few,
yeah.
few,
So like
few
here, you
bits
don't
where,
see anything.
but you really don't. So that's looking really nice.
So when we're gonna sew this, we wanna make sure that we're going to measure 3.5 inches from the top down, and we're gonna mark it. You can mark it with a pen, Frixion pen, not a regular pen, or chalk. But what you wanna do is you wanna make sure that this lines
That is
up.
very important, probably
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah, this is gonna be that this lines up and this lines up. So when you're sewing this, you have to make sure that when you get to the end, that your bias, piping, and your velvet, that all matches up when you get there. So as long as you have it there, then you can measure 1/4 of an inch to make the seam allowance, and then sew up to that point. And then once we get there, then we'll overcast. Trim this, and then we'll overcast.
Okay, so let's do it.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. So let's measure 3.5 inches. 3.5 inches. And I'll steal a pen. I'll put that here for right now. And I'm going to grab a needle, because what I'm going to do is, instead of marking it with a pen, I'm just going to mark it with a piece of thread.
Well, that's a good concept, huh?
Because sometimes I don't want to deal with marking the fabric, and
Well, sometimes, I mean, some of these things we
Yeah.
don't know if it's going to reappear. We just don't know. It's not.
yeah, and the thing I like about this is because I'm marking it, it's going to hold it in place,
Yeah,
so it's
that's
not going to move.
that's a great idea.
And then you're gonna kind of give yourself, so I'm thinking this is gonna be about 1/4 of an inch.
Looks
right
like
there,
it to me.
right there. So I'm just gonna go and sew from here to here, but I'm also gonna tack down these 2 pieces before I start sewing. But I'm gonna tack down over here so it anchors it in place.
Right. So that you just,
Okay, so let me grab,
I mean, you could pin it, but sometimes the pinning moves things. I think your concept was really good too.
I don't like stabbing myself.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of my point. I don't want to stab
It's
myself.
better if others stab you
Yeah.
than stabbing yourself.
Good.
Here's some of my words of wisdom, and I made this up totally myself. I never criticize myself, ever. And the reason I don't is because others are so much better at it than I am. I'll just let them have that.
I use my little tool.
So don't stab yourself, people. And that's a neat little tool. You'll be able to buy those soon in the Carmel Doll Shop boutique. Because boy, I think we said this earlier, but I'll say it again. For hat making, that's really would come in handy. Because sometimes you have to be a tough to do hats.
And you don't want to put that much strain on your fingers.
No.
Because it'll hurt later down the line. As we get older,
Oh yeah, as you're telling us as we
I'm
get older.
feeling it now.
Yeah. Well, wait till you have to put on glasses to see.
So I'm just doing a quick little running stitch here so that it stays in place.
And again, this is just for, those stitches are going to be removed. It's just to keep your trim in line.
Because you don't want it to move, because it will shift and you don't want it to shift.
And it's important because it is going to be right in the center of the back. And this is not a dress with bows on it or things that you can cover up a little whoopsie.
Okay, I have to thread a needle.
I thought I got a whole bunch of needles.
Oh,
Did
no.
you use them?
I used them all.
We used them all up.
I used them all up.
Well, I should have done some more for you, but I have been busy.
Yes, you should see all the work.
I've been basting. So while Angela is doing the trimming, I've been basting all this piping, and it's not that hard, but it's not hard at all, but it just takes time. You've got to just get in there and do that. We are going to show you how to do that, but there's 10 yards of piping that has to be dealt with. So I've been doing that while Angela's been sewing the trim on.
I am going to switch over.
Angela's been having problems with her needle threader, but mine
His
has
is
worked.
perfectly
Mine
fine.
has worked perfect. So you can buy ours from our boutique
Yes.
because you know what? I've said this before, and I'm not trying to sell anything. This little machine has completely changed my life. It's made it so much nicer to sew with.
I tend
But
to
we'll
use
let
these.
we'll
here.
let you struggle.
I tend to use these anyway, and I just started using this, and I'm still not getting the hang of it. But I tend to like the ones. The problem is sometimes it gets stuck.
Yeah.
And you
I
get
can't.
tearing.
I can't do those, but everybody has what works for them. So
So for this, what I tend to do, I want it to be a strong stitch. So I'm gonna double a back stitch all the way. Some people like to, you can sew it on the sewing machine,
you could
Yeah.
absolutely sew this up on the sewing machine.
but your sewing machine might hate.
No, it would
No,
go right
really?
through that. If you want to base that and you want to use the machine, it'll do that just like butter.
So if you're gonna sew this by hand, again, when you're back stitch several times at the very beginning. Because one, you want to make sure it's flat up against this. And once it's there, you want to make sure it's anchored really well. And even though a back stitch in itself is a very strong stitch, you want to do it at least a couple times. So then just follow the line. You could also do a running stitch and then back stitch every so often, but I prefer back stitching. So I go a couple times, rows, and then I'll start my back stitching.
For those of our audience out there that don't know exactly what a back stitch is,
Okay.
explain it to them.
Okay, so with the running stitch, you just go forward and you just keep going.
Keep going.
But with the back stitch, you go forward one, and then you go back, you go past this thread you have in the middle, and you go forward a little bit. So you want to kind of go about like a little more than a 1/16 of an inch to get a really good back stitch. So here's about a 1/16, you go forward a 1/16.
And it is a really,
Yeah.
it's a strong technique
Very strong.
for putting garments together. And it's been around since the beginning of time. You know, we have brought, which we're very proud of, a lot of people into the hobby of creating doll clothes that had, you know, almost no experience. And because of the format where they can rewind and watch over and freeze frame, we've had, you know, people that with basically beginners be able to create beautiful costumes. But some things they just, you know, if you've never heard it or never been, your grandmother didn't teach you, how would you know?
You know, this was one of the first stitches my grandmother taught me how to do. And it was really hard because as a 5-year-old, you don't really understand.
Yeah, why would you go back?
You
You want to just keep going forward.
And my back, when you turn over, my stitches were all over the place because I didn't understand how to kind of keep it straight. A good way, and since I wouldn't have a line to see, a good way if you had like a plain white fabric is to kind of line up your needle, and then you'll know that you'll be making a straight line.
So we try to, if someone asks us, you know, what do you mean by bias? Well, that's not, that's a legitimate question. They want to know, what does that mean, bias? And so, you know, we try to address all those things.
Oh yeah, if you don't understand, you know, go ahead and post a comment and we'll answer questions. Because, I mean, there are a lot of things that I'm still learning. I mean,
Well,
I don't know everything.
I hope we all
Yeah.
continue to learn. The people that know it all can criticize us. Why not?
And it's all different techniques, you know.
Absolutely. Every class that we've worked with, different instructors, you know, I personally have learned so much of the different, and sometimes it's just a little thing, and boy, but when you take those little things and you can add them into your daily use, it's great.
Yeah, learning new techniques, that's what it's all about. Put it in your wheelhouse. That's why I love this. This will save your fingers.
You're going through tarlatan, velvet,
Piping.
But of course, they can do this. They do not have to do this
No.
by hand. You could use this, go right through the machine.
I really prefer doing this by hand, just because it's a stronger stitch. And I feel like I have more control when I'm going over something that you
Sure.
have to match up.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's, you know, just a regular
I mean, I'm
pattern.
all for tearing something out and redoing it, but you don't want to tear out your trim.
No.
It really does. It can't handle that and then still look beautiful.
It'll eat it up.
It will.
And especially if you're making several passes in the sewing machine, it will eat it up if you don't like it and you have to undo it.
So Angela, we didn't talk about this, but I know that you have a very demanding career and a life like the rest of us, but your relaxing time is your sewing, correct?
It is.
Yeah. And that you do actually do commissions for people.
I do. If anyone wants anything, they can just hit me up on Facebook. If they want to contact me, or they are looking for something. They can put it in
the comment and say, Angela, contact me, and you can make your deal, because it keeps you in your habit, huh?
It does. And I do love sewing. It's very relaxing, especially now.
Yeah, you've got time. I mean, not that you've got like time, but you're not going to some of your international trips right now.
Right. That's been postponed for a while. I had to cancel my Ireland trip, so now I had to do something instead. So I've been sewing a lot more.
But you would have even sewn in Ireland, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is your addiction.
It is. It's calming. It's very peaceful. I can watch something and then sew at the same time. Now,
when your main teacher for sewing, was that your grandmother?
It was both my grandmother and my mother.
Okay.
So and even my father, he showed me how to sew some things with leather.
Well, that's a whole other, leather work is a whole other thing. But it does have the basic same techniques.
It is. He would make some shoes in leather, and he did saddles, and sometimes he would sew things for my mother. But that was something we had in the house, was a big industrial sewing machine.
Oh wow, big monster.
Yeah. And we were the type of family that you didn't buy your Halloween costume. You made your Halloween costume.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mother, when we were very young, she would go all out. Nothing store-bought.
Well, those days are gone.
Yes.
They're gone. But you know what? We have, it's the time of year, it reminds me of this, we have a trick-or-treat open house here, and there are some still really, really incredibly creative families. And I say family because it's usually the whole family is out, not just the kids.
Oh yeah.
And they do some great stuff. It's a tremendous amount of fun.
I loved watching it when I came here last time.
You were here one time.
Yeah, it was really sweet.
But if you guys weren't here, I would just be sitting in the shop, just being entertained by them.
I loved it because where I live, they don't do trick-or-treating.
Well, they used to do, it used to be in the neighborhoods and all that here, but now it's something that really the merchants provide the whole fun of it.
Okay.
And I love it.
I'm gonna pull this out, just so.
And I mean, we could be, bah humbug, but I felt like, well, you're a doll store and you're not doing anything nice for kids. That's kind of rotten. I love your little, I'm going to get some of those because that's just nice to have.
It is. It's so much easier than...
A seam ripper? Because
they'll go a little dull. So you could see, here's the back stitches, and then as you pull out, it's...
It's a very good alignment.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
I am.
Okay.
That's good. So I will press it and then I will trim it and then I'll overcast.
Okay.
All right.
So is this time to bring out the big iron for this?
No, I think the little ironing board that you have.
Okay, I'll go get that and we'll be back.
Okay.
So we've got the machine all heated up, and you're going in and tell them what's your plan here.
So I'm going to just press really well, and then I'm gonna overcast so that it kind of falls easier. And because this is very heavy, after I finished overcasting, I'm gonna try to go through with a larger needle and try to grab some of the tarlatan or this fabric here without going to the front to kind of keep
Right,
it
you don't
flat.
want to go to the front.
Because you don't want it then to like fold this over because this is heavy and it's going to move some of it no matter how much you're pressing. So just for this, and then afterwards we'll go up here and then we can.
Well, I mean, if you
Yeah.
you did leather work, you know, you could just take a hammer to it and just. Although it will be crushed velvet then.
Yeah, I do have Glover's needles. I just didn't bring them with me.
Okay.
So I'll move that over. And I'm gonna start from here. I always start from the bottom and going up because again, you want it to match up. You don't want to have a lot of this showing when your skirt is like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad we're doing it your way because this is different than how I would do it. But what you're doing is, you know, totally historically accurate.
And another thing is when you're doing...
I mean, it'd be nicer if it was a lightweight dress.
Yeah. When you're overcasting, overcast as close as you can here, because then to the edge, because then as you pull it, it'll automatically go this way. If you go too far here, then it's just gonna, it's just not gonna look right. So even if you look at some old antique garments, you'll notice that they do go as close to the edge as possible.
Well, it looks like some bulldogs are back from the park, or maybe they're not going to come in.
No, they're coming.
They've got to go have their dinner. So we'll get this all overcast, and then we will be back, and then we will do the opening. Well, we had a good night's sleep. Did you get some rest?
Did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did the seagulls keep you up or wake you up?
They woke me up at 5 in the morning, but I was happy with it. I was just like, and then I dozed off again. So.
Yeah, it is a little bit like Doc Martin, isn't it? When you hear them?
It is, yeah.
And then sometimes they really like have arguments. Do you hear that?
They were arguing this morning, and I took a little video clip of it because I thought it was funny.
Good. Yeah. Well, like I told you to clean this nest, and you don't do what I tell you.
Yeah, there was one that was really loud this morning.
Okay. Well, so now we're going to get to work. So we left you yesterday.
I already did the overcast on here.
So we overcast.
And so I'm going to go ahead and iron that again.
And I was thinking about this in my sleep because that's how I work out things. And I thought, now I wouldn't have done this way. However, you're absolutely correct because with the thickness of this area, you really can't do it any other way.
No.
No. So
you've got a lot of thickness because of that velvet and the piping.
Yeah. If we didn't have that, we could do a whole lot of different trims.
So what we're going to do is
finish work. I mean trims.
I'm going to snip this little guy off because I don't want him peeking. And I'm going to kind of tack this down because that will, again, is just going to flare it up. And I don't want
it'll
it.
fall better on the back. Sure.
And so you just want to get the tarlatan and pull up just a little bit on the side. You don't want to, again, if you try to go too deep, it's going to be too hard for you guys to to go through. You could, of course, use that little tool or pair of pliers. But then it's just going to be a little overcast, but only go through the tarlatan.
You're just picking up a few of the tarlatan fibers, or the weave.
Yep.
If you like.
There's a little.
And I think when you press it down, there's enough.
Yeah, and you could see like now it's.
Yeah, it's starting to do what you want it to do.
And it's just that area, and then you just tie it off, and then you're good. So I'm using a thicker needle because I want more purchase, because it is thicker. You don't want to hurt yourself.
Yeah, the tinies won't do this.
No, the tinies are really good for the running stitches, the back stitches, for the smaller, daintier work. You know, something for like heavier trim.
You need a manly needle.
Yeah. And then I'll go over it at least 3 times. And
It's not coming out.
No. And the last one I'm going to go through twice. And that's it. And it's good. So you can see it's flat.
Yeah, you've overcast from
And then
here to there, and that's a really good match.
Yep. So now here for the opening, I'm going to trim this a little bit. So it's 1/4 of an inch, and you press it, and then you're just going to go half of that.
So you're going to fold it over to about 1/8, correct?
Because it doesn't need to be big, and you don't want it to be bigger than that. You really don't.
I'm going to stay in line with that.
Then you can press it. Another good way to do this, if you're a little nervous, you just baste it before you start doing your hem stitch here. Here already, but like you see here, because this taffeta, it's gonna stay put. If it's a thicker fabric, I would totally recommend basting it. Make it easier on yourself.
Yeah.
But since this is done, and then you could see again, it's gonna be like that. And then when you flip it over, that will go that way. And then
And of course, it's going to look totally different because it's going to be fluffy.
And then we'll go ahead and we'll do where we're going to be doing this hem stitch. I recommend going from the top down.
Okay.
Kind of the same thing from here. You go from here to the middle. And because you're starting here, it's okay to go through the fabric a bit. Go over it a couple times.
And of course, that's going to go all tucked up into the waistband.
Yeah, and you won't see it. So we could trim this little flyaway later. But where you're going to go a little more than 1/8. Take a tiny,
you're just taking a little
tiny
few
piece.
fibers there, right?
Yeah, and then at a slant, go up. I'll
And of
pick
course,
that
this
later,
is the
but
hemming stitch, which is basically for hems. So
tiny.
and this you can use on many applications.
And then really, really good. It's really
And here
good.
you're using your little.
It'll roll a little bit. I should have conditioned. Got a knot. There we go.
Yeah, yesterday I don't usually get knots, but yesterday I get quite a few knots.
It's a little bit, the cotton's a little thicker. So it just depends on the thread. And you do want to use 100% cotton. Please don't use like all-purpose.
We don't let you use.
Don't use the polyester
It doesn't.
stuff.
It's almost like it's sinful in a way of mixing the two things together.
I mean, it's all-purpose, but please don't.
Well, you're not going to get the same.
Try to, and because it is a longer thread, I would recommend using a smaller thread, but I was threading a ton of needles this morning. Just kind of, Don't go
ready.
shove it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, I use shorter threads and
So you go a little bit right where you were before, and then again.
all right, well, we'll finish
Yeah.
this off and then we will be back for the next step.
So we finished the side of the back placket, and I want you to see that by taking just a tiny little bit, you're going to get these tiny little dots, and you will see these on the antique garments.
Absolutely, this would be, that's sewing that they would expect you to do. And you did that fairly quickly, but if you're new to sewing, you just take your time. And if you get it wrong, just take it out, right?
Oh yeah. Another good way to kind of minimize some of the bigger ones is to be maybe using an 80 weight thread. And that's perfectly fine. But, again, just use what you have on hand. It works. It's fine.
And what's nice about this is you've got a grid work to help you with measuring.
Oh, yeah.
I always love that because you've got it basically. You're basically right on the cross of that. All right, so we will be back in a minute with the waistband. So we are back, and now we have got our dressing model. She has got her full unders on, which I think is an important thing to do at this time, don't you?
I do.
Agree.
We have to measure or fit her over her undergarments. Otherwise, it's not going to fit when you put your undergarments.
It could be just too tight.
Yeah.
And then you're ended up stressing the waistband. Although we are going to stress the waistband because she likes it tight, because that's what creates that really beautiful balloon-like shape that we're going for. So, okay, I'm ready.
So this
Lay it on me.
is 8 inches long, and it's 8 inches by 2. And so how we're going to do it is you're going to fold in, and this is how I do it, is I will fold halfway, because this is going to be your midpoint.
Center.
Yeah.
Top.
And then I fold it in to that point, because this is going to be your straight edge. And then you go towards your straight edge, and then fold to the middle.
I wouldn't do
flip
that,
it.
but that's a good way to do it.
That's how because then you have a mark to where you can fold
kind
it.
of finger pressed it.
And then you can press it afterwards. Finger press it, and then you're going to fold it over, and then again press it. So I'm going to do that here.
And the waistband is, I'm sorry people, it's dark, so it's kind of hard to see what
so
you're doing, but
maybe you could see from the light here.
That's pretty good. Oh yeah, so you've already made your pressing lines.
Yeah. So here. And again,
In
you can see
our
the line.
original sample, we did the waistband in silk, which it is proper to do silk, but it's also proper to do some kind of lining material or muslin or a tape. But we decided to do this with the same material that's the lining. You practically don't even need to press that.
I know. That's the lovely thing about cotton. And then I'm going to fold it open, because I have that go on the edges. So it's nice and tight. Gonna then go over it this way again. To our midpoint. And fold
I think everybody's going to want these irons. They're just wonderful little.
It's nice to have, and you
tool.
can keep it on, and when it's on too long, it'll shut off by itself. So then, that's it.
That's it. So how are you going to close that up?
So you're going to close this up, and this is the way I do it. Pull that out. You grab a black thread.
And this is a wonderful little gizmo too that I've got to have, because we've been doing, we sewed a lot of piping, and so we loaded up all of the needles, and it really is nice to have a whole bunch of needles ready to go, and you just can keep on sewing.
And they don't get tangled.
They don't get tangled. It's a neat little, and show them how it turns. I just love the sound. Isn't that fun? It's like being a safe cracker.
It is. I like it.
It actually sounds like a sound effect that you could use in a movie, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could see, okay, it's peeking out a little bit. That's okay. So I'm going to start from the top down. You're going to you're going to go here, and you're going to go it to the edge and push through, because you want the tail. You can cut the tail, but even then, you want it hidden. You don't want to show it.
Right.
And then you're going to
I'm sometimes sloppy with that. I've got to get better at
you're going to tuck it in,
doing my little tails.
and you're going to grab here, and then you're just going to go to slant when you're stitching here.
So it's basically a little
Yeah,
overcast stitch.
A little overcast stitch.
A mini overcast stitch. That's
Yeah. So again, you're going to be using the edge here, this part. You're going to go grab this edge and then grab this edge.
so you're kind of doing an overcast, but you're weaving in and out to get all the fibers.
Right, and then you're totally skipping those two middle folds, because then you don't see it. And you just kind of go back and forth. And you pull it tight, because then
We want this to be really strong.
really, really strong and invisible as much as possible.
All right, well, we'll finish this up,
Oh, wait.
and we will come back for...
I want to show you
oh, yeah, sure.
how to,
I don't want to miss a thing.
again, so you tie off,
At the
but
corner.
at the corner, and then you go back up to the start, pull through lightly, not too very tight, and then you trim it.
You're going to start over again.
No, and then
No?
you just kind of pull it out just a little bit, so then you don't see anything.
Nice.
You don't see an end piece, and you don't see your start piece.
Great. Okay. All right, we'll finish this up, and we will be back. So we're back, and Angela has gotten the... Whoops. Let me get this camera under control. So she's got the waistband finish. It's looking really good. It's really strong. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, it's for this girl. It has to be. And it's going to be. So then, it's perfect.
So we've got, oh yeah, we've got it just absolute perfect. Just what we want, because we want it snug.
Yeah.
All right. So we won't do the closures on until we've done all the gathering, and so we'll come back to that. But this is if you follow the 7.5 inches, it's perfect for her. And if you're working with another doll, you just have to adjust it. All right, we've got that part done, and the next part we're we're gonna have some fun with the next part because you like to do.
I do like to do the cartridge pleating.
You do.
I do.
It makes people in class cry, but you like
Really?
to do.
No. I love doing it.
All right, we'll be back for that.
Okay.
So we're back, Angela, and you have started gathering the skirt while I went to the enchanted forest with the bulldogs.
Yeah.
So tell us and show us what you've done.
So I marked my center. I did a little tailor tack here as my center piece, and then this mark and then this mark here is letting me know this is where I want to start, because this part is going to be flat on the doll. So this is where I start here. I started my thread here on this side, and then I did...
We did a fold over and then overcast it.
Yeah, so I pressed it first, and I overcast it here because we're going to do a whipped gathered stitch and then a regular gathered stitch.
Okay.
So I have these ends, and you're just going to...
So you're going to just do one
side at a time.
Okay.
But you're going to notice that when you gather it, it's going to have this nice fullness here already. When you do a regular gather, flat gather, it's very sharp, and then you don't get that fullness on the skirt around the waist. Now, it depends on the dress, but I find that because you're only using 30 inches, if you use more than 30 inches on a skirt, it's too much and becomes too bulky.
Yeah, this technique wouldn't work.
No. So.
But we're also we're basically doing this in half, so it's because it's really starting at. Well, this is a great thing for our people to learn, because this is a technique that we have not done yet. Can you believe that? All these classes that we've had, we have not done it quite like this.
So now I'm going to hold the top one, and I'm going to still continue my gather and let go of this one, because this one is so much easier to pull
Than the top one.
The top one.
The whip is.
So you're going to pull this out here, because you always want to start off holding them
Right.
first. Because if you see, look, if you do this, you notice how flat that is.
Right.
Versus this,
Right.
which it's puffier. So get it.
But you just have to slowly ease it in.
You don't want to break your thread on the top, and you don't want to harm the edge fabric as you're doing this.
I guess you could literally do this with the needle in 2 needles, is doing this, and do 3 or 4 inches and then gather it in. But that would be so boring.
Yeah, will give you a totally different look. But again, you could see it's much fluffier now.
And we want this to be fluffy because this has to really hold up the jacket.
So what the bottom part does is it kind of elongates this fluffiness, the second gather. And the top one is the one that creates the fluff. That's it. You're done on this side.
All right, that looks wonderful.
And then again, because we started from the back here, it has a nice ending transition.
Okay, that looks great. Oh, I like that. All right, so we'll get the other side done, and we'll be back, and we'll do the attachment. So we're back, and the next step that we're going to do is we're going to attach the waistband.
Okay, so you want to press this for a little bit to kind of give yourself a mark as to where your center is going to be. And going to put it here and pin it right now. And you can see there's our tailor mark or tack. And then what you're going to want to do is pull
2 threads, tell you.
yeah, to the end. And a good way to do it is to pin this to the edge.
And you're not going to tie your threads off because you want to...
No. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the pin head and then
Oh, that's a
secure
good
it.
idea. See, I learn something new every day. That's what those pin heads were for.
And the same thing for that one. That way you can also tug on tight your threads there. And then when you're done, you can tie it off onto that thread and then slip it right off. So it's snug. Again. See, right there. Tug. And that way we could, what we'll do is we'll start from the middle going that way so we
Okay.
have enough. So I'm going to start off with white thread just to kind of show you
Yeah,
what to
because
do.
otherwise they couldn't see it. So.
Right. So you're going to start from the back and you're going to grab as much from that edge and you're just going to whip around.
So you're just doing a whip stitch.
Just a whip stitch.
And you're just catching the top of the skirt piece. What is it, about 2/16 of an inch that you're going in?
Yeah, it's super, maybe even less than that. It's just very much the edge. You're catching this, both of these edges piece, or it's like 3. So let's see, like that.
Yeah, it's
It's tiny, tiny, tiny.
And you're using a single thread.
Don't want to do a double thread because then you'll get caught and then you'll cry.
You're doing a little hanging skirt. It should just hang like a shower curtain when you're done.
But you should do it tight because then your threads won't show.
Yeah, if you do it too loose, then you kind of get, you have a saggy curtain. Now you're into the, so what is your process when you're into the gathers?
When you get to the gathers, you're just going to go through, again, almost like the pleats. You're going to go through at the very top and same thing, just same thing with here. The fabric that's closest to your band is the part that you're going to sew to the band. So,
Okay, we won't let you get too far because
yes.
you'll be done with this. And
So like here's where it starts. And you can see that fabric is closest to the band.
And that's what you're going to pick
And
up.
you're going to pick up and sew, and you sew it tight. Here's another one. Can you find it? Find it, and that's it.
All right.
And
Well,
then you-
we'll redo that in black, and then we'll do the next step for this skirt.
Okay.
We're almost done with it. So we're back, and Angela has completely sewn down the skirt to the waistband. It's looking really good. We'll fluff it out here a little bit. So the next thing, I guess, what we're going to do is try it on Miss Matilda.
Oh, and then you could see it. You can hardly see it. Any of the stitches.
You can't. From where I'm looking, you can't. So that's great. We're going to try it on. We're going to figure if it's going to work. And then we are going to put her hooks on. Hooks and loops. I think it's looking good. You might need to go down just a teeny bit because it looks like it's slipped up over the waist area.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it looks very good. So that's really nice. All right, so I guess the next stage is our hooks and loops. So shall we do that?
Yeah.
I want to see how you do your loops. Each one of our instructors has their own little tricks, so I want to see yours. And so does everybody else.
So we'll do it in white. And looking at this, we can go over that way. So our hook will be here, and we could do our loop there. Wherever, when you pull it, you want it just to kind of be seamless. So that's the way it's gonna lay. If this was more, which it isn't, because you can see that it bulks out a little bit, just use that. There's no wrong way, just the way it lays.
Right. And in French clothing, there is no gender-specific, closure. You can do it either side.
Okay, so we're gonna do a loop, and we're gonna do it in white. And the way I like to do it is with a very big needle, and I like to do it with a very thick, long needle. And if I can, if it's a cotton, like a smaller, thinner cotton, then I'll use something like a tapestry needle instead. But because we have a lot of bulk here,
Yeah, we've got quite a bit to go through, don't we?
so I'm gonna use roughly around here to make one loop, just to kind of mark it. And then, because you already poked a hole in, I'm gonna go through here.
So you're going from the back side
From the
to
back
front?
side, because
Okay.
I want to pull this through.
I gotta move this doll. She's in the way. Excuse me.
So I'm going to trim this off the tail. And I want to pull it, so then now you can't see it.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go through here. And I'm not going to go all the way through. And I'm going to use
So you're going between like the center of the two pieces?
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing? Okay.
and I'm going to pull it taut. Now it seems counterintuitive to, because you want to make a loop. It's more like a T-bar.
Okay, so
Actually,
you're
you
going to
wanna
go
go back.
through again, through the center? Is that what you're doing?
Check again. Make sure you're not going all the way through. Push. Maybe use this guy.
Everybody's new best friend.
And since you want to go 3 times, but since this is the 3rd time, you're going to just tie that off and sew it through.
If you hear snoring, the kids are all in.
They're tired.
They're tired.
Okay.
Well, they're either tired or really bored with our. We're putting them to snooze land.
tie it off a couple times. And now this part, you want to make sure you go through,
And you're going through
tug. I'm going to go backwards.
backwards.
Go through, pull through, backwards, through.
It's hard to put this into words, so
Yeah.
you just have to
Gotta watch.
follow. You've got to watch.
So now that you've
It's
gone
almost
through,
like a macrame thing, isn't it? Really?
it is.
Yeah, they're sort of turning out really nice. Sometimes I forget the steps of this, and you just have to, if you forget and you make a mistake, you just have to take it out and do it again.
Yeah.
So those are looking really good. The camera can't get quite in there as close as I'd like to, but
So what I kind of like to see is if it looks like a fancy D in cursive, I know I
Okay.
have it in the correct
okay,
position.
that's a good
And I
tip.
pull.
If it looks like a bad O, then you've made a mistake.
Right.
Well, that's a beautiful loop.
And you just shove it over. If you try doing it the sharp end, you're going to end up catching the fabric
Yeah, don't do
and
that.
sew.
It's just so much harder to.
Yeah.
And you will get with this kit, you will get a hook with a metal loop, but this is really the preferred way to, really all authentic way to do
And
it.
it's not, it's really, it just seems hard, but
It's
if,
not.
if you do it, it really isn't. And then by the time that, because you're doing all this pulling, you'll notice that now you have a gap.
All right, we'll be back to show you the end fit.